Hey, everybody. I'm Josh Schachter, founder and CEO of UpdateAI and host of Churned. Joining me today is one of my favorite people, and I truly mean that. That's Katharina Schmidt. She is an executive coach and a leadership team developer, mostly for startups and for scale-ups. She also, as an added bonus, is my executive coach. She's helped me throughout my journey over the past few years. And today we are going to talk about stress, which we know affects all of us out there before and after COVID at all times. So, Katharina, thank you so much for being on our show today.
I'm very excited to be here with you. Wonderful.
I'm really excited too, because we've had a lot of good conversations. Obviously, as my coach, you've helped me out with managing my stress and my uncertainties. And so to be able to now lasso this and share it with the public is something that I feel really good about that. That I feel like, to me, that feels like a service that I'm offering to the public, is to take some of your knowledge and your soothing and give it to our listeners. We want to start out, as we normally do, by going unchurned in homage to the name of our podcast and, of course, to the key metric for many SaaS companies of churn. And so what I'd like to ask you first off is, where were you born and where do you live now?
I was born in Darmstadt in Germany, and I live in Newport Beach in Orange County now.
Are there major differences between, what was it, Darmstadt, Germany?
Yeah, Darmstadt.
And Orange County? That's quite a difference there.
Major differences. It's it couldn't be more different. And I love diversity. I believe diversity keeps us alive, and the processes that we encounter when we go through diverse experiences and the transitions keep us alive. Sometimes they make us suffer, and that as well keeps us alive.
We'll leave it at that. What's something that would surprise people to know about you?
That I grew up in a commune where everybody had a responsibility. Like, one person was responsible for the laundry and someone did the dishes or the cleaning. My mother was responsible for the cooking. She is an amazing cook. I think my dad was responsible for the admin of the house and the rental, etc. It was a group of 12 to 16 people, very left wing.
I had no idea. That was your background. That's really fascinating. What's something that, because we will open up in this conversation, as my conversations with you always have that impact. What's something that makes you feel vulnerable personally?
So I would say that's my kids, and it's the day they were born. I think that's the biggest burden that comes with having the privilege and the gift of kids, is there is an extra set of vulnerability. And I call it, there's an extra layer of energy in your life that goes along with having kids. If something happens to them, or even the thought of something happening to them. And I don't think I'm very scared or anxious at all, but the thought of something happening to them makes me very vulnerable.
What I love in hearing you describe that as an extra layer of energy. So you're an incredibly positive person, positive thinker. We're talking about stress today, and you even just reframed the concept of vulnerability into an extra layer of energy. It sounds almost like a positive thing. That to me amazes me. So, I don't know if you want to elaborate where that came from, but I love that perspective that you had.
Let me elaborate a little bit. I think early on in our lives, we learn to hide our vulnerabilities and our weaknesses. That's where our vulnerabilities show up often. And the moment we start to embrace our vulnerabilities, our weaknesses, our failures, our mistakes, I believe they take up less energy. And so naming that fear for my kid creates extra energy, or makes me vulnerable, and that creates extra energy need, is a way of dealing with that extra energy. And it's not an easy thing.
No, it's not an easy thing at all. Let's move the conversation to the main topic about stress. I want to ask you, Katharina, and so we all have stressors. In your role, you're talking to leaders, all different types of leaders in business and at SaaS companies. What are the types of stressors that generally come up in the conversations that you have with them?
Yeah, and there really are different stressors. One of the stressors that I just came across this morning is the stress around feelings of imposter syndrome, not being good enough. That stress, am I up for the job? Am I the right person? Can I really do this? Do I have the right qualifications? Do others find that I comply or that I'm enough?
Wait, is this did you get this just from our prep call? Are you reciting my stressors?
Hey, it comes back. Imposter syndrome is highly prevalent, and it's even more prevalent. 70% of us have it, and it's even more prevalent in communities of high achievers, people who go into corporate environments or want to perform or like metrics and are competitive, have it even more. So it comes in all forms and sizes. We all have it sometimes. And the feeling of not being good enough or maybe being judged by others can be very stressful. And it's made in the head. It is a mental thing that we learn when we're children. And it's usually a subconscious dialogue that talks us down. So that's one part of stress. The other stress is just having a lot of stuff on your to-do list and more things in a day. And I think all of us recognize both. More things to do than there's hours in a day to do. That's a different type of stress. And when the stress leads to outcomes and you feel you're progressing, I think the science of progress is really important here. When we feel the stress is progressing us or doing stuff on our to-do list is progressing, then the stress is more healthy. If it's ruminating, if it's negative self-talk, the stress can be debilitating and it can be paralyzing and it can be really tough for people. It can bring them down in their own head.
Is it actually healthy? I get what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. This idea of progress is kind of the key to happiness. No matter where you are in life, as long as you're feeling a sense of progress. Same thing with checking off, tasks on your task list. I recently read a book called 4,000 Weeks. It's about the idea that we all have about 4,000 weeks to live, which is not a very large amount of time when you actually think about it, right? Most people, when they guess how many weeks you have to live, they say like 40,000. But it's only 4,000. And it's this idea that we often fill that time. We end up filling the time with stuff, finding stuff for ourselves to do. And we should actually just chill out and be present and not find tasks. Like the antithesis of having to do tasks is really what we should be after.
Oh, I'm totally with you. Practicing our muscle to not do is an amazing skill, and we all are losing it. There is constant pinging, messaging, notifications around us. And if we do not learn to switch it off and overcome our fear of missing out, which again is a form of stress, we might end up pretty empty. And I sometimes think is maybe the early onset of Alzheimer and dementia is that maybe like a result of us not being able to not do, to be. We're human beings, not human doings.
The early onset Alzheimer's or dementia is a result of not being able to do. Elaborate on that for me.
Hey, it's a hypothesis, and it's not based on a lot of science. I think that the time we live in is extremely information rich, and it's notification intense, and it feels time scarce, which is not, because you said we all have 4,000, or we have 1,440 minutes a day. Everybody has 1,440 minutes a day. And we can spend that time clicking into every notification or being distracted by every pling, or we can spend it intentional and purpose driven, and at least part of the time intentional and purpose driven.
Yeah. What do you do personally? Because you're very present. How do you impact this in your own life?
Hey, and again, it's what we said. It's not an easy task. It's ongoing work. It's not a quick fix. There's no silver bullets. So I would say, changes over time. I meditate. And it takes me a long time to be present when I do the dishes, or to be present when I cook, to remind myself of it. For me, the ritual of putting on music when I start to cook, and I find it important because I think we partly are what we eat. So I'll cook a meal for my family every evening. When I start to cook, cut the onions, I put on music, and there's a little ritual in that. So I build in rituals into my day. I start my day with a short moment of meditation, not long, because then again, here comes I need to do 20 minutes, which enlarges the stakes. No, I can also just do 5 breaths. I start all my coaching calls with like a minute or 2, sometimes 5 of breathing. And I talk, and I use my own voice to center myself. And by that, I center my clients.
I have this fun vision in my mind here of your recommendation to folks listening here, that to start your calls with customers with just a group breathing exercise for the first minute or 2 of your call. Get everybody on the same page.
I had a workshop with 130 people, and I invited them to do the bumblebee breath with me, by the way, I think it's great for our listeners. You breathe in, and when you breathe out, you close your mouth and you make the sound of a bumblebee through your nose, like this.
Did I get it?
You try it, Josh, when you go for a toilet, like a bathroom break or whatever it is. You try it. There is research that shows that the brain waves really change and shift into a different state when we do that. It's just one example. And I mean, what works for me doesn't work for others. This really it's an adaptive challenge. It's ongoing work. You're never done. As much as I would like for everybody to be done, once you're done, the world has become more complex, and there is a new technology that wants to get your dopamine and your attention, and you need to adapt again.
So if we're bouncing back and forth between Zoom call after Zoom call after Zoom call, we can try that bumblebee technique, or any other ritual.
The bumblebee breath. Making a cup of tea for you, getting enough water. What is it, like jumping up and down 10 times between each call? I don't know what it is for you.
For me, I'll tell you actually what it is for me. You tell me if this is healthy or not. For me, folks, it's funny that you're doing that right now. Right now, you're drinking your Nalgene water bottle. As I'm about to talk about this, for me, I almost find it comical what people must think about me. They must think that I go to the bathroom every 5 seconds, but I am constantly drinking tea, either caffeinated or decaffeinated, but just that's my just calm down ritual. And that's my little break that I reward myself with after every other call or something of that nature, right? That's my smoke. That's my smoke break. Break.
And it's a pretty good one. I mean, even black tea, there is research that shows that it has it decreases the risk of cancer.
So find your ritual, I think, is the takeaway for me for this idea that we all get overwhelmed and we have that as a stressor. You also mentioned the idea of imposter. I'm sorry, did you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, find your ritual. And self-care comes in many, many, many forms. A small cup of tea, one breath, thinking about one thing that you're grateful for right now. One thing. Even in the midst of a customer screaming at you and someone really saying nasty things to you, what am I grateful for?
That reminds me, about a year ago, you and I were talking, and it was very stressful for me at that time. And do you remember this? We had like the 3 C's that we had come up with. I think you had come up with for me to focus on. And I think it was company, maybe it was company. I know one of them was customers looking to bring on board. And the third one was focus on compassion. It was compassion for myself as a priority.
Yeah, I love that you remember them.
So that idea that actually can be something that we prioritize in our professional life as a way to keep us more sharp, more effective, is just the compassion for ourselves. The other piece that you mentioned is imposter syndrome.
Cool.
And I'm sure a lot of people find comfort in knowing the stat that you quoted. That's 70% of folks feel that, right? Or probably thereabouts. What can we do? If we all feel imposter syndrome, we all imposters, how do we overcome this sensation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. Imposter syndrome is like, if we say the self-talk of imposter syndrome is, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And many of us have gotten that through the nurturing of our caretakers. And there's usually little sentences in our head, often unconscious, that make us down and that make us feel like, ooh, I don't belong here. I'm not enough. Others are better. Regardless what it is. I believe we all have it at times. We all have it. Some people have it maybe more prevalent than others. We all have it. And the way to deal with that is to understand the cognitive processes in yourself. Reflect on what are those thoughts that come up that make me think that, to normalize it for yourself. We all are intrinsically insecure. We all are. And then to find, I call it mantras, positive affirmations, new thoughts. So our brain apparently is trained to find these thoughts that bring us down. You're not good enough. Oh, others are better. I've never done this before. And then find new senses. I will do my best and I will give it my all. Or I've done this before. I went through through challenges before. And to find new sentences. I am enough. I'm here. I just had a coachee who came up with this amazing, it was a presencing exercise. And I said, what is one sentence that brings you in the here and now? And you know what he said? I am here. I am here. And I made him say it 20 times. I am here. Whatever, again, what might work for him does not work for you, does not work for her. So again, what is one sentence? What's one mantra? Something that I'm going to repeat, and it might change over time, but for now, I got this. I belong at this. I belong at this table.
I think it's important, and especially now that we're all sitting kind of in front of our computers. A tactic that I've used in the past is I've actually put a mantra on a Post-it and put it in the very bottom of my desktop monitor. And then it's always there in your periphery just to go back to. Little things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stress can be transferred from individual to individual. I think that's actually something else you've taught me a couple of years back. And for our listeners that deal with customers who may be frustrated, may be angry, upset, stressed out in their own right, and our listeners in that sense, they can't control that other person's feelings. Maybe they can, I don't know. But how should they best manage that? How do you best operate with somebody at the other end of the line and maybe tempering their stress, maybe helping them adjust it, but also just making sure that you don't pick up on that stress and that doesn't stress you out.
Yeah. Wow. I'm always in awe with people in customer success teams or in customer service centers who do that well. It is such a challenging thing to do well because and I think in America it's more intense. The emotional reactions of customers and expectations of customers are higher, and emotional reactions are more intense in America than in Europe, where I'm from. It really is a challenge. And I would say there's a few, like your breath is your most direct anchor into your body. So when someone goes at you and says profanities or is incredibly angry and gets at you personally, the stress is the most direct way to not let that get into your body, not feel attacked and not be attacked, and not let the sympathetic nervous system go into a fight, flight, freeze, defend, attack back mode. The breath can bring up the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the receive, it's the rest and digest, but also receive, move with, lean back, keep out, relax, which is incredibly difficult when someone stands in front of you with a knife. That's how our nervous systems react when someone is yelling at us. It's like, I'm gonna fight you back. So we really have to do something to calm the nervous system, to not fight back. That's the breath is the most important, like I would say the most important tool and the most direct anchor. If you take a deep breath right now and you breathe out longer than you normally do, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So breath is one. You talked about reframing before. Reframing. This is not about me. This is not about me. This is a customer. He's tried a lot of stuff. He's maybe tired. He's not slept because his kiddo or someone, you never know what happened in someone else's life, why their nerves are out there and they're working it out on you. Reframing. This is not a bad person. It's not about me. I'm going to leave this with the person. At the same time, so breath, reframe, compassion. Okay, I am here to help. Like, say what your intention is. What happened? How often? Where? Ask clarifying questions. So breathing, reframing. It's not a bad person. This is not about me. Stay compassionate. I want to help you. Talk iMessages. Ask clarifying question.
3 golden nuggets there. Breathe, reframe, and show compassion for yourself and for the other person. Kat, thank you so much. I always generate so much energy from the vibes that you give off, and I'm sure our listeners did today as well. Really appreciate your being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh. Unchurned rocks.